Hey, Magic friends, welcome back. This is your captain here, and it's time. Crimson Vows spoiler season has begun. Here's the review of October 28th and all the cards that came out. Now, before I get started, I just want to let you know I only picked the regular art style of all the cards. Most of the cards, amazingly enough, have like four art variants. So like there's the regular art, and then there's the full art, then there's the alternative full art, and then I think there's the box topper art. Like there's so much, it's just plumb freaking ridiculous. Um, so we're only gonna do one art style cover as we go through this, because as the cards start getting spoiled, they're gonna spoil a bunch, and there's no point looking at the same card with different art. We'll go over that stuff later. Let's just actually look at the cards, see how good they are, and what they look like. So, without further ado, tray tables and seat backs in a full upright position, boys and girls, as we take off into spoiler season. So, let's go. So, the first thing I'd like to send a shout out to is dun 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 dun, the next cycle of lands. Now, like I've told you guys before in Midnight Hunt, this land cycle where when it comes into play, if you have two or more, it comes in untapped. I think is a great land cycle, and we get it finished within the two sets, so we don't have to wait. There's no fuss, no muss, and this is fantastic. I think this is going to be one of the best land cycles that we have in products in the recent years, right next to Shocklands. Because let's be honest, if you're playing on turn one or two, um, you're probably not playing an aggro deck, and if you are, um, the aggro decks in standard especially are not good enough that one drops matter all that much. And if you, the only one it really does is mono white. And if you're playing mono white, you don't need dual lands. So anyway, so shout out to these lands. I love them. Just take a good look at them. Pause if you need to. Moving right along, let's start with Commander. So our very first Commander card, we have Straffon Mar Progenitor, I guess. So black, red, 2 colorless for a 3/2 flyer. It is legendary. Beginning of your end step, you create a blood token for each player who lost life this turn. Whenever he attacks, you may sacrifice 2 blood tokens. If you do, you may put a vampire card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible till the end of turn. Pretty sweet. And we'll go over the blood token as soon as we're done with these commander cards. Only 3 of them. The next commander here we have Millicent, Restless, Revenant. So blue, white, and 5 for a 4/4 flyer. Pretty high. But it costs 1 less to cast for each spirit you control, which will be really cool in Commander because as the Commander casting costs go up as they get killed, the more spirits you have, you can still make it cheap. So it's pretty neat. Whenever the Restless Revenant or another non-spirit token you control dies or deals combat damage to a player, you create a 1/1 white spirit token with flying, so that's pretty sweet as well. Moving right along, our last Commander spotlight for the day is the Wedding Ring, and I think this is pretty sweet. So 2 white and 2 for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, target opponent creates a token that's a copy of it. So, you're basically marrying your opponent or target opponent. So, whenever an opponent who controls an artifact named Wedding Ring draws a card during their draw turn, you draw a card. Is that pretty sweet or what? So, whenever an opponent who controls an artifact named Wedding Ring gains life during their turn, you gain life. So, you're basically making a team up with another commander opponent, so you both draw cards, because remember it's a copy, so if you cast this, you give it to somebody else. When you draw cards, so do they. When you gain life, so do they. So you're basically becoming a wedding couple. So this pretty sweet, great flavor. I think it's going to make for lots of good shenanigans in Commander or any multiplayer deck. Good Lord have mercy. So pretty sweet. I do like it. It's 4 mana, so it's going to be a little costly. So I think this is going to be something worthwhile, definitely. So moving right along. Now we're out of Commander. Let's take a look at what that blood token looks like. Here it is. These are the blood tokens. So it's an artifact, it's blood for 1, and tapping it, you discard a card, sacrifice the artifact, and then draw a card. It's okay. Uh, I'm not real big on it. Now, with that said, this is an okay thing, and it will help you get through your deck and cycle and all that stuff. And it's fine. But the real key to these are going to be how other cards interact with blood tokens when you make them and when you sacrifice them. So let's keep an eye on that as we go through. So just remember that you can sacrifice this to discard and draw a card, and then other cards will give you bonus effects for doing so with the blood token. So it's kind of a neat mechanic. So let's go on. Let's check out the actual spoilers. So here we go for standard, starting Crimson Vow. We're going to start with Vampire's Vengeance. Red and 2 colorless for an instant. Vampire's Vengeance deals 2 damage to each non-vampire creature. Create a blood token. So this is a very good board wipe, especially in a vampire deck when you're going up against other aggro decks per se. So it's an uncommon. It's okay. It's probably going to be pretty good. In sealed, it's standard. It's really going to depend on the format, but I think this is going to definitely see some play because it's going to do a lot of good board wiping with the way mono green, mono white set up right now. It won't kill everything, but it will kill a good chunk of it. Um, so we'll see. Next here we have Change of Fortune. So for red and 3 colorless sorcery, you get to discard your hand and then draw a card for each card you've discarded this way. It's a very interesting card. It's probably gonna be really good in combo decks. I don't think it's gonna be all that great in standard. Because it's 4 mana, it's gonna probably be a good Pioneer card. Because remind you, you're gonna cast this and then discard the rest of your hand. So if you just cast this card, you can't discard anything. So therefore, you can't draw anything. So it's really gonna be a combo enabler at best. Um, so we'll see. Could be a good commander card. Moving right along, we have the first flip card here. It's a werewolf. It's a mythic. Volatile Arsonist. So for 2 red and 3, you get a 4/4. Has menace and haste, so that's pretty sweet. When it attacks, it deals 1 damage to each of up to 1 target creature and 1 target player, and or up to 1 target planeswalker. And it has day bounce, so it's pretty cool. The flip side, it has, again, menace and haste, except this time when it attacks, it deals 2 damage. So that's pretty cool. It's a 5/5. I think this is a pretty good card. I don't know if it's going to see a whole lot of play because it does still die relatively easy, and I don't think it does a whole lot extra. Now in Seal, this thing's going to be just bomb nasty. Because for 5 mana, you're not going to get anything better than this. Menace, haste. I mean, come on. All in all, it's going to be a sweet card though, and it will probably show up in some werewolf decks. Next, we're going to move right along here. We have the Wedding Announcement, Flipside Wedding Festival. So you can see here, it's an enchantment for a white and 2. It says, at the beginning of your end step, put an invitation counter on Wedding Announcement if you attacked with 2 or more creatures this turn, comma, draw a card, which is pretty sweet. It says, otherwise, you create a 1/1 white healing creature token. Then, if Wedding Announcement has 3 or more invitation counters on it, you transform it. Creatures you control get +1/+1. So, pretty much, we'll probably see a lot of play in the white wing deck just because um, it's every turn is going to generate you a 1/1 human for 3 mana, which is sweet. Once you get to 3 humans, they all become 2/2s. And if you actually have creatures out, it's not a dead card because you get to attack and then draw a card. So I think as a rare, it shows some promise. We'll have to see how it plays out in that white weenie deck. If you guys haven't seen that, go check out that video. I think it's going to play well, but we'll have to wait and see. Moving right along, next we have the Wedding Invitation. So it's an artifact for 2 colorless. It says when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. That's already sweet. And it comes in untapped. It says tap, sacrifice Wedding Invitation. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. If it's a vampire, it also gains lifelink. Probably not anything really great that's going to see any kind of standard play or anything like that. However, this will be a really good draft and sealed card. Just cause for 2 mana, it lets you draw a card. Plus, it's going to give your vampire lifelink. Something can't be blocked. I think it's going to be good enough. Just because 2 mana drawing a card sometimes is just good enough. Moving right along, next we have the Geist Snare. So we have a blue and 2. It's an instant. It says this spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a spirit, which is pretty cool. It also costs 1 less to cast if you control enchantment. So it could be 1 blue to counter target spell unless the controller pays 3. So it could be a 1 blue mana leak, which is pretty sweet. I think this is going to see lots of standard play, especially if spirits becomes a real good deck. Just because 2 mana counter target spells they pay 3 is basically mana leak, and that is a powerhouse of a card in the old days and even now, especially in modern. So I think this has got some legs. And of course, in sealed, it's going to be the bomb. Moving right along, next we have the Dominating Vampire. So 2 red and 1. It's a 3/3. When the Dominating Vampire enters the battlefield, you gain control of target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of vampires you control. Until end of turn, untap that creature, it gains haste. This is going to be nuts, especially in vampire decks where you can steal creatures and punch people in the face with them. You get to untap, tap creatures. It can actually be kills. I mean, this card is just amazing. It's a It's one of those cards where you steal your opponent's creature, untap it, hit him with it, except it actually has a 3/3 body on it. You can also see the cool border on it. This card is just nuts, guys. It's rare. I think it really should be a mythic because when it comes into play, even by itself, you still get to steal a creature that's 1 mana or less. And as you know, a lot of aggro decks right now are 1 mana or less. Or even think of this: someone lays their Ren and 7 makes a token to block. You lay this by itself, even though it doesn't have haste. You steal their token and punch Ren and 7 in the face, and then there you go. And then village rights and things like that are still around, so that you can then sacrifice their token. Like, there's so much possibilities with this. If you haven't watched my videos on my red black deck I've been playing, I would definitely be putting this bad boy in the sideboard minimum, if not in the main. So, just because I can just steal their stuff and village rights it. So, moving right along, I think this card's going to see a lot of good play in standard and sealed. Alright, we have Growl the Omnivore. It's Frog Town, boys. So for a blue, green, and 2 colors, you get 3/3 Frog. It says whenever a frog you control attacks, you get to mill 3 cards. Okay. Whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a croak counter on it. Alright, you may play lands and cast spells among cards you own in exile with croak counters on them. So that's pretty sweet. As long as this guy's in play, you're basically like you're going to attack, you're going to mill 3, and then just dump your hand. It's almost like a fixed Uro. I hate to say it like that, but it's really like a fixed Uro. I think this thing's going to have a lot of legs, and it's going to make blue-green something to definitely deal with. In sealed, I think it's going to be amazing. It's going to be a bomb. The only problem in sealed I see with this is people decking themselves, because by the time you swing, I'll let you swing at me 6 times because you're going to mill 18 cards. I mean, you'll probably die before then because you're gonna be casting so much stuff. It's gonna be silly. However, um, yeah, this is gonna be an amazing card, guys. It's definitely gonna see some standard play, but that's probably gonna be it. I mean, Commander obviously too. Next here we have Angie, the Maid of Dishonor. For a red, black, and 2, it's a 4/5, so that's pretty good stats. Whenever the Maid, God, it's hard to read. Whenever the Maid of Dishonor and/or one or more other vampires enter the battlefield under your control, create a blood token. This ability triggers only once each turn. Okay, so there's a way to create them. Then it says for 2 colors, you can sacrifice another creature or a blood token. Each opponent loses 2 life, you gain 2 life. So there you go. See, there's something else that activates with blood counters, and that's a pretty good effect. I mean, it's basically 2 mana to do a 4-point life swing on your opponent, plus this thing's a 4/5. This card's really good, and it's got to be really big in all the vampire decks. Moving on, we have the Demonic Bargain. So for a black and 2, exile top 13 cards of your library, then search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, and then shuffle. This is very interesting. I'm sure this is going to be some kind of combo-centric card. Man, losing 13 cards off the top. I'm sure there's something you can do with this. However, I don't see this getting played in standard at all. Commander, probably because, I mean, 13 cards off a 100 card deck. Who cares? Uh, so, there's that. Moving right along. All right, we have a flip card. We have the Drogskol Infantry for a white and 1. You get a 2/2. That's pretty much it. When it dies, it has Disturb for 4, a white and 3, which basically becomes a enchant creature, which gives the creature +2/+2. And then if the armaments we put into the graveyard, you exile it instead. So here's something else to look for, guys. I've noticed that the Disturb mechanic is, in this set I've seen so far, a lot of it's all equipment, which is pretty cool. It's not just creatures over and over and over, so the decks are just so creature heavy with Disturb creatures that they just have to be a thing. But now you have actual enchantments to go with them, so they can go into equipment decks and things like that, and be creatures at the same time, so you don't have dead draw. So it's pretty sweet. I do like it. Obviously, it's probably not going to see a whole lot of play, but I think it's going to be really good in sealed and limited, maybe even in Commander. Moving right along, we have by invitation only. So for 2 white and 3, you choose a number between 0 and 13. Each player sacrifices that many creatures. So 5 mana Wrath, basically, that can kill up to 13 creatures. I don't know why you would choose 0. This is going to be a really big card. Not only because it's a Wrath, but because it's a good Wrath, especially in Commander decks. Also, too, if you have 6 creatures and they have 2, and one of their creatures is just the bomb, you can cast this, say 2, keep 2 your best creatures, and then punch them in the face. So this is definitely going to be a very good card, I think. It has a lot of good versatility as a Wrath. So moving on. we'll see all kinds of play. Massive Might. 1 green, target creature gets +2/+2, gains trample. Basic common. It'll be okay and sealed, but that's the only place it's going to see play. So we keep going. We now have the Fel Stinger. So for a black and 2, it has Death Touch. It has Exploit. When a creature enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. When you exploit a creature, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. So this is going to be a really cool card, only because if you have a token you can sacrifice or a small creature, this thing will come in, you can sacrifice a small creature, lose 2 life, draw 2 cards, have a 3/2 on the field. In that worst case scenario, you can always play it, sacrifice itself, and then draw 2 cards for 3 mana. So it's not terrible. This looks really good in that black-red deck I was talking about. Check that out in my other videos. Only because, turn 2, I always lay a Kalana, the Paintist, the Painter. And then on turn 4, I can put this into play with the token, make this a 4/3, then sacrifice her because she's legendary, so I might have another one in my hand. Lose 2 life, draw 2 cards. It's a really cascading effect. I think this is going to be a great card, and it's going to see a lot of play in Standard. Definitely going to see play in Sealed. That's probably about it, though. Well, Commander will probably see some play. Sigarda's Summons, 2 white and 4. We have an enchantment here. It says creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have base power and toughness 4/4 flying, and are angels in addition to the other types. This is going to be a really big card in green. Only because with Ranger class, this thing is going to be explosive. You play a Ranger class, you swing with a 2/2 Wolf, put a counter on it. Now it becomes a 4/4 flying angel with a +1/+1 counter on it. So, there's going to be some definite shenanigans with this. It's going to be good. It's going to be great in Commander. Probably okay in Sealed. 6 mana seems to be a lot in case it doesn't do anything. But yeah, I think it's going to be a decent card. Moving right along, we have the Tied Gargantua. So for 2 black and 3, you get a 5/4. And about on par. It does have Exploit, and when you exploit something, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So that's pretty cool. It's not too bad. You can actually exploit itself, like always, the zombie kraken. In case you need to get rid of something troublesome on the field. If you have a smaller creature that's not getting through, it's easy to sacrifice it to get rid of your opponent's stuff. But most of the aggro decks have cheap creatures, so the exploit might not do a whole lot. But it is a common, so in Sealed, in Draft will be an amazing card. And it might be the only place it sees play. So next year we have another flip card. We have the Weary Prisoner. So for red and 3, you get a 2/6 Defender with Daybound. So not great for 4. But when it flips over to Nightbound, you get the Wrathful Jailbreaker. Attacks each turn if able, and it's a 6/6. So 4 mana 6/6 that hits every turn. Pretty sweet as a common. Probably going to see some pretty good play in Sealed and Draft. But that's probably going to be about it. Moving right along, we have the Gluttonous Guest. So for a black and 2, you get a 1/4. When it enters the battlefield, you get a blood token. And whenever you sacrifice a blood token, you gain 1 life. So again, something else to use blood tokens. You can draw and discard, or you can discard and draw, then gain a life as well. Or if you use it with the other creature that lets you sacrifice it, they lose 2 life, you gain 2 life. That they lose 2, you gain 3. So decent common. Probably be okay in Sealed Draft. That's probably about it. Next year we have the Apprentice Sharpshooter for a green and 2. It's a 1/4 with reach. Da-da. And now we have the new mechanic, guys. So the new mechanic here is training. It says whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So it's almost like Evolve, or whatever that other spell was. I forget what it was, where you attack with something bigger. The other creature gets a boost. I forget what it's called now. But anyway, this could be a really good mechanic. It's going to be great in Sealed and Draft. Which will make this really good because it's a 1/4, so it'll get really big really quick. And if depending on what has training, this could be a really big mechanic in Standard moving forward. Next here we have the Griff Rider, a white and 2. It's a 2/1 flying, and it also has training. Once again, whenever a creature attacks with another creature has greater power, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So a 3 mana 2/1 flyer is fine. The ability of training is even better, especially when you start making bigger ground pounders. This thing gets bigger every time you swing. I think it's a great common card. Could be great in Draft and Sealed. All right, we have Dithora, the Vengeance Victim. So for a blue and a white, you get a 4/4 flyer. Now, when the victim attacks or blocks, you have to sacrifice it at the end of combat, so that's not so great. But Disturbed for 3, once again, you get to enchant another creature and basically make it that one card. I'm having a brain fart. Man, I just can't think of nothing today. That enchants the creature that when that creature swings, you make a 4/4 spirit token creature swinging that goes away at end of combat. And once again, if this enchantment leaves the battlefield, it has to be exiled. I think this is going to be a really strong rare. And it might make white-blue aggro decks a thing because this is just bonkers. Plus, you get to swing once and hit somebody for 4 on turn 3. Jesus, it's huge. So, moving on. Probably good in standard, great in draft. Anyway, the Voldaren Bloodcaster is a black and 1 for a 2/1 flyer. That is an amazing rate. Whenever the Bloodcaster or another non-token creature you control dies, you create a blood token. And it says here, whenever you create a blood token, if you control 5 or more blood tokens, you may transform it, which it then becomes a 3/3 flyer. So it's almost, so this thing is not as fast, but probably better um, than Delver Secrets. Because then at the end, it says at the beginning of your combat on your turn, if you get up to 1 target blood token you control, it becomes a 2/2 black creature token with flying, haste, in addition to its other types. So this thing starts pumping out stuff really quick. This is going to be a powerhouse red card, and we'll probably see lots of play in lots of decks. Definitely great in sealed, modern, sealed, even modern. Definitely standard. So, great card. Next, we have good old Olivia, the Crimson Bride. She's back, boys and girls. Now, this one's a little much. It's a black, red, and 4 for only a 3/4 flyer with haste, so eh. But the ability here, it says that when she attacks, you return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains when you don't control a legendary vampire. Exile this creature. So basically, this is like an animation card because it has haste and can swing on the first turn. Like, it's just incredible. Depending how much and how big the creatures are that we can put in our graveyards, this thing could be really good. I think it's going to be really good in standard. I think there probably will be a place for it. Definitely great in sealed and draft, sweet Jesus, and definitely commander. Might even see some pioneer play. Moving right along, next we have Soren the Mirthless. And I'm not even sure if this is the right picture for the regular one. I think this is the, I don't know what picture it is. Anyway, so for 2 black and 2, we have a Soren, so 4. That's pretty good. One, look at the top card. Look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card, put it into your hand. If you do, you lose life. So basically, his plus is a Dark Confidant, which can be cool. -2, you create a 2/3 black vampire token with flying and lifelink. That's also great. -7, he deals 13 damage to any target, and you gain 13 life. That's also very nice. Great Planeswalker. I think this is going to probably see some definite standard play. Definitely going to be a big commander powerhouse, and draft and sealed, this is a must play. Moving on, look at that, boys and girls. They reprinted Thalia, the Guardian of Thraben. So if you don't know, Thalia is an old school girl. She's a white and 1 for a 2/1 first striker that non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. What more can you say? Great card, and it's really going to power up the white weenie deck and the mono white decks of the world, especially in standard. This is a powerhouse. It should be played in every format. So moving on. All right, we have Savior of Ollenbrook. So for 2 white and 1, you get a 1/2 with training. So once again, if it attacks something bigger, it gets bigger. Now, when Savior of Ollenbrook trains, you exile up to 1 other target creature from the battlefield or creature card from a graveyard. Now, when the Savior leaves the battlefield, put the exile cards on the battlefield under their owner's control. So not only is this removal for the opponent, this also can take cards out of your graveyard so that when it dies, they go back into play. Another way to do graveyard manipulation for big, fat, nasty creatures. This is just nuts. Now, granted, you have to have 2 creatures to attack with, and they have to want to kill this. So, but yeah, this is a mythic. Is just insane, guys. This is going to see all kinds of standard, modern play. It's got the right cost, maybe even legacy to some point or some degree, and definitely commander. Oh, good lord, is it going to see some commander play? So, moving right along. All right, next here we have the Overcharge Amalgam. So for 2 blue and 2, you get a 3/3 flyer that has flash, or that has exploit. And when you exploit something, you counter target spell. So basically, if you want to sacrifice a creature, it's a 3/3 flying. I'll counter your stuff when it comes into play, and it's a rare, so it's really good. Worst case scenario, you spend 4 mana to counter a spell by sacrificing itself. But yeah, this thing is just bonkers good. Gonna see tons of standard play easily. I don't think it's gonna see anything outside of that other than Commander. In draft on sealed, it's gonna obviously be great, but the older formats probably won't be using something like this. So moving on. Next, we have Dig Up. So this is a very interesting one. So for 1 green, you basically search your library for a basic land card, you reveal it, and then put it into your hand and shuffle. So it's decent, but it's rare. So it has something called Cleave. Now, Cleave is a new mechanic that it says when you cast this spell for the Cleave cost, if you do, you remove the words that have the square brackets around them. So basically, what it's saying is for a green, 2 black, and 1, you can search your library for a card and then put it into your hand and then shuffle. So 4 mana, basically the Diabolic Tutor that in the early game is still usable to get you land so you can cast other ones of these later because it's not legendary or anything like that. It's a sorcery. Like, this is an amazing. This is probably one of my top card picks for standard that's coming out. This is going to be amazing in Commander, amazing in Sealed and Draft, and it may even be good enough for Pioneer and even Modern. I mean, it does have a 1 mana starter, so like, man, it could just be so good. So yeah, I expect this card to really hit the ground running, guys. So moving on, we have a new land, the Valdarin Estate. Look at that, it's not beautiful. So for a rare, it's only a colorless land, but you can pay 1 life and you get 1 mana of any color to cast to spend on vampires only, which is okay. Now for 5, you can create a blood token. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each vampire you control. So that's pretty cool as well, because if you get 2 or 3 vampires, you can slap out blood tokens like they're nobody's business. And that one vampire we showed that was only cost 2 mana that transforms with blood tokens, this can easily fuel that. I think this is definitely going to see some standard play, maybe even draft if you get the right cards, maybe sealed if you have the right cards. But outside of that, this is definitely going to be a commander land for upgrades to commander decks. That's probably the only place it's going to see anything. So unfortunately, not a lot of legs with this one, but it's still good enough. So with all that said, guys, thanks a lot for watching. I do appreciate it. And as always, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, put some comments down below what your favorite cards are. I'd love to talk to you about it. And until next time, remember to be kind and look for the new spoilers coming out tomorrow because they're in spoiler season hot and heavy. And man, I cannot wait. See you next time, guys.